Today on How It's Made. Fur coats. We have the details all sewn up. Hearses, a deadly serious business. Outdoor lighting fixtures, a feature that should prove illuminating. And golf tees, getting you into the swing of things. But first... fur coats have been around through thick and thin. They used to be very bulky, but because of new manufacturing techniques, today's garments are much thinner. Whether a posh person's folly or a fashion faux pas, either way, they're sure to keep you warm. Today, fur coats are made for a changing market that values less bulk and more texture. The beaver pelt undergoes multiple transformations until it barely resembles the original. The fur is steamed to fluff it up. Then it's given a static charge to make the hairs stand on end. The pelt then passes through a row of small blades several times. This shears the fur so that the hairs are uniform and the pelt less bulky. But because the downy undercoat is the most insulating part, this fur will still be warm. Grooving is a new technique that involves carving a pattern into the dyed fur. The blades cut a zigzag pattern down the length of the fur, giving the beaver pelt a unique look and feel. Now, the furrier demonstrates a process called letting out. He feeds a pelt into a machine that slices it into diagonal ribbons. He's literally cutting it to shreds. But when this process is complete, they'll have a new and improved fur. The diagonal strips are sewn together, with each one arranged a little lower than the last. A special sewing machine is used. As the operator feeds the strips, he pushes the fur down so it doesn't get caught in the seam and ruin the look. The narrow strips of fur created by this letting out process will run the full length of a coat. It provides a more flowing look than simply sewing whole pelts together. It also makes the fur a little rippled. A process called blocking will correct that. The leather of the pelt is wetted down. Then, to fit the pattern that's been traced onto a board underneath, it's split a little at the end. The fur is then stapled onto the pattern. It's left to dry overnight, and then the original pattern is traced onto the other side of the fur, now smoothed out from the stretching. The position for a pocket is marked on, and the fur is trimmed to the pattern so the dimensions are now exact. Specialized finishers sew a cloth pocket into the split prepared for it. They stitch in the zip and then cut out pieces of silk to line the coat. Before that lining is sewn in, the front edges of the garment are built up by tacking lamb's wool on the inside edging. This will add structure and help the fur hold its form as the lining is put in. Starched cotton tape now goes into the hem of the coat to keep the fur from stretching. Every fur gets these hand-stitched finishing touches. Once the label goes on, this fur coat is ready for a night on the town. Nice, if you like that sort of thing. Hearses are all about luxury, because luxury says dignity and respect. From the plush custom interior to the stretched and streamlined design, it's nothing but the best for our dearly departed. We're all dying to see how they're made. It's the final journey, and the vehicle is custom made for the occasion. The hearse's construction begins with the Cadillac chassis. It's been built without rear doors, rear windows, back seats, a boot, or rear bumper. It's sliced in two using a reciprocating saw that cuts through metal like butter. The two halves are pulled apart, so there's just less than 80 centimeters between them. Then the frame rails are welded in place to join the two halves. Each new frame rail is encased with a support piece. The framework for a hearse has to be extremely solid because it will carry heavy loads for many years. The base Cadillac also has more structural reinforcements than a regular vehicle, like stronger wheels and suspension. The steel rear cage and roof frame are hoisted onto the car, and the roof is built up with steel rails. The framework for the casket loading door goes on next. Once the rear cage and extensions to the chassis are in position, the panels are mounted, which are made of a blend of fiberglass and space-age materials. Adhesive seals the panels to the steel skeleton. And all the panels are secured in place with screws. This is a made-to-measure job. The panels fit precisely to the welded cage. Meanwhile, over in the press room, a non-stick coating is rolled onto a die. Then a sheet of steel is placed over it. The steel also receives a coat of the non-stick agent. An 850-ton press then pushes the steel into the die to the shape of the door of the funeral coach. The non-stick coating allows the door to be easily removed without being damaged. The door is attached to the back of the hearse, using super strong hinges because they'll have to stand up to a lot of wear. The door is high and wide and opens to an angle of 135 degrees to allow for easy loading of the casket. After the seams in the body are smoothed out and it's given a high-gloss paint job, the roof is covered with a foam pad. Vinyl material is placed over it and pulled snugly around the corners. The deck of the hearse is lined with a heavy-duty laminate. Next, the fabric that covers the ceiling of the hearse is put up. The hardware that will allow the casket to easily roll in and out of the coach is mounted. Finally, the custom-built sign is fixed in place. From the lustrous paint job to the lush, curtained interior, the funeral coach has an ethereal look. Appropriate, since it's designed to make an exit that's out of this world. Coming up on How It's Made, outdoor lighting fixtures, making light work of their production. And golf tees. We'll find out what drives this product. See you after the break. Welcome back to How It's Made. Day or night, streetlights light up our lives. Typically standing as high as 8 meters above the pavement, they cast a warm glow in the darkness and continue to provide street decor during the day. And if you're a dog, you're going to get very excited about this one. This fixture, called a luminaire, starts as a technical drawing. To make certain parts of the luminaire, the factory uses a process called sand casting. To create the internal features of the sand mould, workers take a wooden mould for the part and fill it with a mixture made of white sand. They insert a wire into the centre to make an opening. Then inject carbon dioxide into that opening. This causes a chemical reaction that hardens the sand. They remove the white sand piece called the core from the wooden mould. To cast the external parts of the luminaire, workers start with a mould made of aluminium. Inside it, they build another mould made of brown soil. They place a wood block on top and pack down the soil. They do the same on the other half of the mould. Now, with a copper pipe, they make holes in the soil mould, one into which they pour molten aluminium. The other vents air. They spray the inside with compressed air, so no particles will stick to the cast piece. They position the core into the soil mould. Keys in the soil mould help them position it exactly. Then they pour molten aluminium into the mould. Aluminium is an ideal metal for streetlights because it's lightweight, rust-resistant, and it won't stick to the soil mould. After 2 to 5 minutes, they open the metal frame and shatter the mould. They use a drill to remove the white sand piece from the inside of the cast aluminium part. Next, they sand down the part to make it smooth. Automated drills then pierce pilot holes for various hardware. A welder places a bracket in a vise, then welds a decorative tube onto it. Next, he welds an anchor plate onto a pole. The upper part of the pole is welded to a larger bottom part. All the poles, brackets and luminaire parts go into a series of chemical baths to prepare them for painting. The model shown here comes with tempered glass. They installed the lighting system. First, they position the bowl-shaped aluminium piece. Then the lamp socket is mounted, with the electrical components inside the aluminium bowl. Finally, they install a reflector inside the hood to project the light toward the street. They apply labels with product and maintenance information into the fixture's hood. Now they can close up the luminaire and mount it on a pole or bracket. And let there be light. Before golf tees became popular, players would tee up their ball on a mound of sand. The first peg-style tees were invented more than a century ago. But they didn't really catch on until the 1920s, when one company used professional golfers to promote them. That wooden peg you stick in the ground to hold the ball is almost as important as your golf club. You use a tee on the first stroke of each hole to give your drive shot extra distance. Production begins with white birch logs. Just one 20-centimeter diameter log yields close to 3,000 golf tees. The logs go onto what's called a step feeder. This conveyor transports them to a debarking machine. Then a slasher saws the log into shorter lengths. A roller with steel teeth called the thumper roll secures each log to a sharp chain. This holds the log in place as it heads for the saws. 4 saws work their magic, carving the 1.4-meter long boards into shorter dowel boards, each measuring 46 centimeters. Then a series of chains lays down the dowel boards in a single file on what's called a moulder infeed roll. The moulder's 2 rotating heads transform the rectangular board into round dowels. An outfeed roll drops each dowel onto a belt for several quality control checks. An inspector examines the dowels, removing defective pieces and setting aside dowels that need more cutting. A single inspector sorts close to 19,000 dowels every hour. They go onto racks that hold 8,900 dowels each. Rack after rack now travels into a lathe. A blade whittles the dowel to a preliminary shape. This tool, called a trumpet, moves over the dowel, sculpting the tee's final shape. A blade simultaneously slices the tee from the dowel and forms the cup. The metamorphosis is almost complete. From wooden boards, to dowels, to tees. Next, the tees go for a tumble in a sanding drum. This cascading action has the tees sanding each other's surface until they're smooth. The slots on this machine separate the good tees from the bad ones and screen out the waste. Long nail-like bumps on the machine divide the tees so that only one drops down at a time. The tee fits through only if it's perfectly shaped. The rejects and wood shavings roll across the top and land elsewhere. The good tees land in a big bin called a tote. Golf tees come in various lengths, but your average one is 7 centimeters long and weighs 0.02 grams. So a tote typically holds some 100,000 tees. A tote dumper then dumps 2 totes of teas into a paint drum. Small steel flights inside the drum send the teas cascading. With each turn, they pick up paint. It takes 2 hours and 38 litres of water-based paint to fully coat the teas. Then another 2 hours to dry the paint. A trapdoor releases the teas onto a vibrating conveyor and into a tote. If these teas are to have printing on them, there's still one more step. They get an extra coat of enamel paint to create a smooth surface for the ink. Shiny or matte, plain or printed, the golf tee has come a long way since the days of teeing off on a mound of sand. So, if you're looking for a little extra warmth, or you're heading off towards the light, or looking to emerge from the darkness, now you know how it's made.